Hello everybody, welcome. I'm No O2 and thank you for watching this video. This is part 1 of what will be a fairly long series, in-depth guide into the CO, everyone's favorite Advance Wars redhead, Sami. Please be sure to check the description. 1, for the link that will take you to this page, this Advance Wars by Wiki webpage that talks about Sami, showing all this basic information. In addition to that, there's some information on this wiki page that I'm not going to be talking about to give a general gist on how to play her and how to play against her and things like that. Some decent information that I just won't be going over. I'll be giving you my opinion, not theirs. Secondly, check the description of this video or the timestamp system thing. I'll be breaking down this video very specifically. And this is how I'll be breaking it down. In this video, this part 1 video, is going to be about Sami's basic abilities, her CO abilities. We'll be talking about her day-to-day, her double time, and her victory march. A little in depth. And in that order. So, let's start with Sami's day-to-day abilities. Oh, and one thing too. At the end of the video, I'll be talking about the future videos for the series in a general sense as well. What content that you can look forward to. So, Sami's day-to-day abilities: foot soldiers gain 30% attack, and a 50% capture bonus, rounded down. Other direct units lose 10% attack. Transports gain +1 movement. Sami has got a lot going on in her day-to-day life. So let's break this down bit by bit. We'll start off with the foot soldiers gain 30% attack. That seems cool. What does that mean? This is actually true of all of the COs. We got all these COs, plus 10% this, minus 20% that. Their CO things do 2 points of damage and blah, 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 blah. The reality of it is, there's all these numbers, plus this, minus that, attack, defense, what have you. What do the numbers really quantify into, though? What is the actual applicable application? You know what I'm talking about. What is the actual significance of these numbers in any given match that you're playing? So, for Sami, it's about getting that 2-hit KO with your infantry. Now, in general, again, the principle of it all is that for all of the COs, these numbers sort of boil down into, does this extra attack mean that I can use less units to eliminate an enemy unit? And the baseline that we're always shooting for is a 2-hit KO. 2 of my units attack 1 enemy unit, and that enemy unit is sent to Valhalla, right? That is the baseline that we're always sort of shooting for, because 3 sucks. 4 is the most that you can get. You can't, unless you're using ranged units, right? Every individual unit has a surface space of 4 when it comes to direct attacks. So the baseline really is 2-hit KOs. So when it comes to Sami's foot soldiers, with a bonus of 30% attack, what that quantifies into, that Sami's infantry can 2-hit KO just about any other CO infantry while on a city. And of course, if they can do it on a city, they can do it in the forest and on the plains and in the fields and on the beaches, and they'll never surrender, or we'll never surrender, or they'll surrender. And that's the significant part of Sami's bonus 30% attack as regards to her infantry, is that she can very reliably, under a huge amount of circumstances that you will encounter in your day-to-day games, Sami's infantry can 2-hit KO enemy infantry. Now when it comes to her mechs, Sami's mechs will be doing more damage than her tanks do. Sami's mechs, a Sami mech getting the first strike on an enemy tank will pretty much eliminate it from battle. The numbers aren't super important. We still need 2 mechs to 2-hit KO a tank, which is significant, of course, but mechs have a whole slew of problems, and we'll talk about that in another video. But for the most part, Sami's mechs are going to heck up artillery, tanks, anti-air. Recon's Sami's mechs will 1-hit KO. Pretty much guaranteed city or forest for the most part, or pretty dang close to it. Though I think Sturm might have something to say about that, right? And so, when it comes to Sami's bonus attack damage, it's like what all the other COs are concerned about. Sami's infantry can pretty much reliably two-hit KO all of the things that it should. Infantry, mechs, mechs versus tanks, mechs versus anti-air, two-hit KOs across the boards. That sort of lower range of the economy units and things like that. Let's move on to the bonus 50% capture point. For those of you who don't know, we're going super basic here. Buildings have 20 points of HP, which we refer to as capture points. When you move an infantry on top of those buildings, it will begin capturing it, dealing damage to the building's HP or capture points. The damage dealt to a building's capture points is equal to the infantry's current HP that is capturing. So if a 10 HP infantry begins capturing your city, it will deal 10 points of damage, taking that city from 20 capture points down to 10. Sami's gets a bonus 50% to that. So if you have a 10 HP infantry, 50% of 10 is 5. 10 plus 5 is 15. Sami's healthy infantry will deal 15 points of damage to a city. In fact, at the very bottom here, we have unit HP as regards to our infantry or mechs, and how much capture points they end up dealing. Pretty nice little reference, especially if you don't remember or can't recall. The most significant thing about this in general is that from 10 to 7, Sami's infantry are guaranteed to capture a building in 2 days, which is the standard. Sami's ability here doesn't necessarily allow her to capture things faster, but allows her to capture things despite being injured, which no one else can do. That's sort of how we're going to quantify this bonus 50%, is that one, a larger variety of infantry or a larger variety of health circumstances for infantry can capture buildings in 2 days still. Not only that, this bonus is rather significant. Well, I like to talk about the two most important numbers for you. A lot of the times are going to be 10 HP and 3 HP. We love capturing with 10 HP. That's always what we want. If we capture with 10 HP, it's going to drop the building down to a total of 5 remaining capture points. Let's say somebody runs up and shoots your capturing HP. How rude of them. How much surviving HP does your infantry need in order to still capture that building in 2 days? So if we capture with 10, we can be knocked all the way down to 4 HP and still successfully capture that building in 2 days. If we get knocked down to 3, we're just below 5, capturing only for 4. Well, I'd like to say the sort of general, the most important numbers that we're looking at here is 10 and 3. If you capture for 10, you're hoping that they don't get you down to 3. This offers a unique opportunity for Sami, where in most circumstances, how we quantify this is that just about everyone who's attacking you will need to attack you with 2 units in order to stop you from capturing. If you capture with 10 HP and somebody only shoots you once, there's a lot of circumstances that will pretty much allow you to survive that hit with enough remaining HP to capture on the next day. In fact, if you were playing as Max, who has 20% damage on his tanks, he is guaranteed to not do enough damage. 120% damaged tanks will only get your infantry down to about 4 HP, guaranteeing your capture. The only way you can do it is a max again, right? 120%. You'd need a comms tower. 130% damaged tank will then have to roll, potentially get you down to 3 HP. This allows Sami to capture buildings, sometimes right in your opponent's face. You roll up on a building, you start capturing it. If you can cover 1, 2, 3 of the sides of that infantry, they only got one opportunity, one chance, one shot. They hope not to blow it, to eliminate your infantry that's on the building. Of course, if they kill your infantry, the capture stops, right? But this sort of offers a lot of opportunity for Sami to capture buildings that she really shouldn't have the ability to capture, and that really other COs can't capture at all. Now, other direct units lose 10% damage. We're going to follow the same general rule of thumb here for the bonus damage. What does this quantify into? Minus 10% on other direct units. So our recons, our tanks, our medium tanks, right, our anti-air, they lose 10% damage. And 10% is actually quite significant in the world of tanks and vehicles. Most other COs, their tanks will pretty comfortably 2-hit KO enemy tanks in a variety of circumstances, right? Or obviously the standard is, or not the standard, the at the tippity top, a tank on a city. A tank on a city. Now, you don't want to attack a tank on a city that doesn't end up getting killed. It gets healed on the next turn. So you ideally want to 2-hit KO it. Because of this minus 10%, what we quantify it into is that Sami does run into an issue where she might need a third unit to eliminate a tank. Sami rolls up with one tank, does a shot, rolls up with a second tank. Depending on what that tank is standing on, hopefully a road, usually that enemy tank will survive with 1 or 2 HP. Depending on your rolls, depending on your comm tower, depending if it's standing on a plains or a forest or a city and things like that. And in fact, I think 2 Sami tanks are guaranteed to not 2-hit KO an enemy tank on a city. Little things like this, I'm not going to show you all of it in the damage calculator and stuff like that, but for the most part, if you really want to get in depth, you know where the calculator is on an Advanced Wars by Web. You can do the math. Actually, it's sort of a good habit to have preemptively for a CO that you're maybe trying to learn, if they have numbers that affect their damage. Which sort of lends Sami into this issue of got a tank problem. Because now a lot of her vehicles don't get the luxury of those 2-hit KOs. And so her minus 10% attack actually ends up being rather significant. And that's just sort of something to keep in mind. In fact, we'll talk about it in a future video here, how we can deal with the tank problem. And lastly, for her day-to-day, transports gain +1 movement. Similar to her capture point thing, this sort of allows Sami to potentially do things that other COs can't. Granted, transport units I don't think are being utilized a whole bunch. There's some openings. They work on some maps, particularly bigger maps and things like that. And of course, they synergize with mechs and stuff like that, which as a Sami player, you might want to be building a couple extra mechs. But the thing that I think is most unique and most interesting about this transport thing is that for Sami specifically, there will be some maps where Sami can get to certain places 1 turn sooner than any other CO could possibly accomplish. Than any other CO. So sort of a very unique thing, I think, for Sami is that she has a unit that gets a natural +1 movement. I don't think any other CO really does that except for Sturm, and he's not gaining bonus movement, it's just forests don't hinder his movement. So sort of a unique thing for Sami. And this bonus transport will basically allow the possibility of different unique openings that only Sami can possibly do. Kind of a cool concept. And so just in general here now, in her day-to-day, we have a character that is dynamic, that's unique, that she has to basically play in a different way that everyone else does because her vehicles don't have the 2-hit luxury. Her infantry do. She can capture in your face. She's got transport that got extra movement. Typically, because of her day-to-days, a Sami army composition is going to look different than any other COs. And also, too, a lot of her opening builds will also be rather unique to her as well. And I think there's actually a lot of depth in that for Sami here, making her really, really unique in how she can potentially be played, utilized, and, I don't know, basically maximized as far as what she could potentially do on any given map. Now, her power. Double time. Pretty straightforward. +1 movement, +20% attack. Now, when it comes to this bonus attack, it's not nearly as significant as our +30 that we get, because we still need to use 2 infantry to 2-hit KO an enemy infantry. This bonus 20% doesn't quite get us to a 1-hit KO, right? Because again, when it comes to bonus damages, the most significant thing that you can gain is going from 3 units to 2 units. From a 3-hit KO to 2. From going from a 2-hit KO to 1. Those are sort of the transitions that are most significant when it comes to gaining bonus damage from your COs or extra comm towers and things like that. So it's like sometimes like if you might have played games where you got both comm towers. Whoa! Unless that 10% damage is resulting in that in the additional or the easier KO, sometimes that 10% isn't actually as significant as you might think it is. Now, of course, right, more is more. But for the most part, this 20% attack, not super huge for the infantry in general. It's pretty much still 2-hit KOs across the board. I think it guarantees that you can get a 2-hit KO versus enemy infantry on a mountain. But other than that, not a big deal. For our mechs, though, right? Our mechs already do more damage than our tanks, inherently. It still doesn't allow our mechs to one-hit KO tanks or anti-air, but it does enough damage now at this point that your enemy tanks and anti-air will pretty much become useless, knocking them down 2 to 3 health. Of course, all varying, all depending on if they're on a city or forest or if you have a comm tower or not, things like that. But at this point, this double time will allow your infantry to knock enemy infantry down to about 1-2 HP, mechs to knock enemy vehicles down to 2-3-ish HP. Though it's not a one-hit KO, it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good. It's not as significant as I think some might think it is, but knocking an enemy tank down to 2 to 3, it's pretty much out of the fight. It's not dead, but it's not dead. It's still there, but it's not as much of a contributor. Now, the reason why I talked about this not being nearly as significant is, though, even though we're, for the most part, eliminating these units as fighting units, they can still be used for blocking and being a part of the wall and surrounding your units and things like that. So still pretty good, but this is all sort of standardy, right? And then the +1 movement, pretty good. Really significant for your mechs, right? This is basically a 50% movement gain for your mechs. One big issue with the mechs is that they have such short movement in general. Infantry too. We'll talk about the mech thing right later on. But really good for your mechs. I will say, one, I don't fight a lot of other Samis. I don't see a lot of you guys out there. Where are the Samis at? But two, when I do fight the other Samis, I actually don't see them using double time quite a bit. And when I first started playing and was learning the game, somebody gave me the suggestion like, hey, consider using double time a little bit more. And I did. And I found great success. Because sometimes you can surprise your opponent with the double time. So many people are going to expect you to use your victory march. But really, you're just looking for opportunities to do significant damage. Just like anybody else's CO. CO power. Or super. The point is this the right time to use it? And when it comes to double time, it's just extra movement and extra damage, which means that if we pop it right now, can we get in there, surprise our opponent, eliminate their infantry, get our mech onto the top of a tank? That's great value for us. Can we do significant damage with it? Sometimes you find that opportunity, you should pop it, for sure. For sure. When it comes to Victory March, though, her super. Foot soldiers gain +2 movement and +40% attack. Foot soldiers can capture buildings instantly, even with 1 HP. Now, when it comes to the bonus attack damage, now we've hit the 1-hit KO area. Our infantry will have the ability, given all the circumstances, to potentially 1-hit KO enemy infantry, depending on what they're standing on. That's a huge jump. Now we've made that huge leap from 2-hit KOs to 1-hit KO. Same thing for our mechs. Our mechs now, I believe, I can't recall the exact numbers. The exact numbers aren't super important. For the most part, though, one mech now will pretty much eliminate one enemy tank. If it doesn't, it's at 1 HP. It's super dead. It's useless, other than it can be part of a wall. But the +40% attack is sort of like way more significant than the +20%, just because we get from that 2-hit KO to the 1-hit KO possibilities. Bonus to movement, very, very good. We love it. When it comes to infantry and mechs in general, one of their main weaknesses is that they lack the movement. Now we have infantry and mechs that are moving along with the army, can engage from a distance that is, relative to our tanks. For the most part, in an army composition, your infantry are in front anyways because you want to protect your valuable units. So they're usually one space closer to an enemy force anyways. With this bonus movement, Infantry are just about able to engage enemy forces at the same range that a tank can, for the most part, in the practical sense of it. But this is what you guys were waiting for, right? Foot soldiers can capture buildings instantly, even with 1 HP. Now, the obvious application of this is that if your enemy HQ is within range, 5 movement for our infantry, you can walk an infantry on top of your enemy HQ, instantly capture it, and win the game. Kind of a win button for the most part. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have lost that way and maybe felt a little cheated. Sorry. But I would say this ability is actually quite counterable. You just park something on top of your HQ for the most part. You can play around it. You know your Sami's building up to it. You see it happening. You can sort of prevent it. But I will say, this is an incredibly powerful effect in general. Even if you're not outright winning the game by an HQ capture, most maps also have a city limit capture win condition as well. There's X amount of buildings on a map, given the map size. Most of the maps are then assigned a capture limit. And essentially it's, if you capture X amount of buildings on this map, you win the game as if it were an HQ capture. And even then, even if you're not winning by that particular condition by using Victory March, a lot of the times, Victory March is a huge economic swing or potential for it when it comes to flipping enemy buildings. Instantly, you can march out, capture 2, 3, 4, 5 enemy buildings, right? If you capture 3 enemy buildings with Victory March, right? With Victory March, that is a 6K economic swing in your favor. You gain 3K a day for your income, and they lose 3K a day. That is a huge, huge advantage. And if you can hold those buildings for 2, 3, 4, 5 turns, sometimes Victory March, just in that sense, can be enough to win the game outright by overwhelming your opponent with a superior economy, or help you equalize in a game that you were maybe losing before. So Victory March has this potential where you can either outright win the game, come back from losing games, or get ahead in even games. Huge, huge, powerful Victory March. We love to see it. Now, overall, what do we have here in general? What do I see? What is the big picture here with Sami? From her day-to-day abilities to her Victory March, sort of ignoring the double time in between. Oh, one more thing I want to mention. Because of her power bar here, right? Her 3 initial bars are for her double time, and the last 5 are for Victory March. When COs have this sort of smaller power bar and larger super bar, those COs have the unique ability to chain powers together. What I mean by that is, let's say we're building our bar up. We're about here-ish, right? We're almost to our super. But then we see an opportunity to use our double time. You can pop your double time, do its thing. Your opponent takes their turn after you, then you get back to your turn. Sometimes you still have enough power bar buildup left over that you can pop a second double time. You can do 2 turns in a row of double time, potentially, depending on where you pop your initial one. It's sort of not a unique thing to Sami, but a unique thing to all COs that have the sort of smaller bar versus their super bar. But there has to be a big enough discrepancy between the two. But Sami's one of those COs that has the ability to potentially pop double time 2 turns in a row. So kind of a cool thing. And so again, you can potentially surprise your opponents. You're building up. They're preparing. Sometimes I've seen people, as I build up to my super, they sometimes back up a little bit, and they'll scatter some stuff onto buildings because they just don't want me to just walk onto buildings for free. They want me to commit units to eliminate them, things like that. And sometimes when they do that, sometimes you can just double time twice in a row, steamroll them with their infantry, get surrounds, get on top of them, then everything, all the vehicles come in behind and finish the job. But in a general sense now, in all the grand picture of Sami, from her day-to-day to her Victory March, think she's a rather unique CO. The reason why I ended up choosing her to be my main, or the reason why I'm always going to be playing Sami the most, is that I think comparatively to all of the other COs, I think she offers the most unique playstyle. The most unique decisions. Her army compositions are pretty much never going to look like anyone else's army compositions. She has the potential for unique early game openings, unique capture phase openings where she can sneak in transports and fight for contested territories in different ways that people can't because of the bonus attack damage. I think Sami overall offers the potential for an incredibly unique playstyle or maybe play experience if you've never really played her before. And I think it's quite cool, quite exciting. And I think in that field, I think she's top tier as far as a unique playstyle is concerned and things like that. So that's my sort of basic breakdown of the Sami powers and day-to-day here. Just the basic information. In the future videos, though, we will be talking about, and not necessarily in this order, but pretty close to this order, we're going to then be going in depth into Sami's, the mech problem, the tank problem, the fog problem. Then we'll be talking about Sami's potential for opening early game, her capture phase. We'll talk about sort of like the mid game and then the late game, closing games out, and some example games to go along with all that. Very, very cool stuff that I'm super excited to share with you guys, which I will see you in the future. Thank you.